I want you to picture a scenario. It's a Friday afternoon. You have just wrapped up, say, a 3-day off-site leadership workshop.
Mm-hmm.
You're exhausted, but you are absolutely buzzing. The facilitator was charismatic, the binder they gave you is 3 inches thick, the coffee was actually decent, and you've had what feels like a spiritual awakening about your management style.
You've had the breakthrough. You've done the trust falls.
Exactly. You've done the role playing, you've shared your vulnerabilities, and you're driving home thinking, this is it. I'm going to be the leader my team deserves. I'm going to change the culture. You feel like a superhero.
And then Monday happens.
Monday hits you like a freight train. You walk into the office, your inbox has, 400 unread emails.
Mm.
There's a crisis with a client, 2 people call in sick, and your calendar's double booked until Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
And suddenly that 3-inch binder gets shoved in a drawer. And all those profound insights
Gone.
gone. We call this Monday morning amnesia.
It is the silent killer of professional development. And honestly, it's heartbreaking. You have this massive buildup of potential energy, and it just dissipates the moment reality punches you in the face.
That is exactly the frustration we are tackling today. We aren't just talking about why we forget things. We are digging into a phenomenon that costs organizations billions of dollars a year. It's technically called the Leadership Development Learning Transfer Gap.
Which is really just a fancy way of saying the massive disconnect between learning and actually doing.
We're basing this deep dive on a really comprehensive article titled Bridging the Leadership Development Learning Transfer Gap. It's a heavy hitter. It pulls together foundational research on training transfer, organizational behavior.
And some really compelling case studies from giants like Microsoft and General Electric.
Right. And the mission today is to figure out why the soil of our workplaces so often kills the seeds of our learning, and, more importantly, how to fix it.
Because the research shows that while companies pour money into these programs, the actual transfer, the application of those skills to the job, it remains just disappointingly low.
So this isn't just for HR directors. I mean, if you've ever tried to learn a new skill, whether it's coding, public speaking, or just trying to be a better listener and felt like you just couldn't make it stick, this research explains why. So let's start with definitions. We keep throwing around this word transfer. In casual conversation, that just means moving something from point A to point B. But in this scientific context, what are we actually talking about?
So the classic definition comes from Baldwin and Ford way back in 1988. They define transfer of training as the degree to which trainees effectively apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes gained in a training context to the actual job.
Okay.
But here's the key insight. It's not binary. It's not just a checkbox of, did you do it or not?
Right. It's not just parroting back a script you memorized.
Not at all. The literature breaks it down into 3 specific dimensions. And usually people fail because they only think about the first one. The first dimension is generalization.
Okay, let's unpack that. Generalization.
This asks, can you apply the skill in a new, unfamiliar situation? In the workshop, you might have role-played a difficult conversation with a nice, cooperative partner who followed the script.
Sure, it felt safe.
Exactly, it was safe. But on Tuesday, when you have to have a difficult conversation with an employee who is defensive or crying or angry, can you generalize the principles to that messy reality?
That's the everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face moment. The workshop is a controlled lab. The office is the wild.
Precisely. If you can only do it in the lab, you haven't transferred the skill. So the second dimension is maintenance.
The longevity factor.
That's it. Can you keep doing the behavior 6 months later? Or, when the quarterly crunch hits and stress goes up, do you revert to your factory settings?
I think that's where most of us fail. We do it for a week, maybe 2, but then the pressure mounts and we go back to being command and control because it just feels faster.
Speed is the enemy of maintenance. When we're stressed, our brains crave cognitive ease, so we grab old habits. And the third dimension is adaptation. This is really the highest level. Can you modify the skill when the context shifts entirely?
Give me an example of that.
Okay, so say you learned how to lead a team of 5 people in a conference room. You're great at reading body language. But suddenly, your company goes hybrid. Now you have to lead a remote team of 50 people across 3 time zones.
A completely different ballgame.
Right. Can you adapt those core leadership skills to a digital environment?
The article makes a really interesting distinction here. It argues that achieving these 3 things, generalization, maintenance, adaptation, is exponentially harder for leadership skills than for technical skills. Why is that?
It comes down to context. Think about learning Excel. If I teach you a VLOOKUP formula, That formula works the exact same way on my computer, your computer, and a computer in Tokyo. It's what's called a closed skill.
Okay.
The environment doesn't fight back.
But leadership is an open skill.
It's inherently relational. What counts as good communication with one employee might be interpreted as micromanagement by another. You can't just copy-paste leadership behaviors. You have to read the room, read the culture, read the individual. And that makes the transfer gap much, much wider.
And when we fall into that gap, the article highlights that the consequences are actually darker than just wasted budget. I was struck by the term organizational cynicism.
This is a very real danger.
Yeah.
Imagine you're an employee. You see your boss go off to a fancy retreat. They come back talking about empowerment and psychological safety and all the buzzwords. But 3 weeks later, they're yelling at you for a mistake or ignoring your input. What does that teach you?
The training is a sham. It's just corporate theater.
Exactly. It creates performative culture. Employees start viewing training as something management does to look good, not to actually improve. And once that cynicism sets in, it acts like an immune response against future learning.
Wow.
Even if you bring in a great program later, people won't buy in because they've been burned. They just roll their eyes and say, here comes the flavor of the month.
So the stakes are incredibly high.
Huh?
Okay, we've established the problem. Now I want to play detective. Who's the villain here?
When training fails, I think our knee-jerk reaction is to blame the trainer. Oh, that workshop was boring, or the student, they just weren't paying attention.
And that is the trap. We obsess over the content of the training, the slide design, the exercises, but the research, specifically a massive meta-analysis by Bloom and colleagues, points the finger somewhere else entirely.
Okay.
They found that work environment factors often exert a stronger influence on transfer than the design of the training itself. That is wild. You're saying I could have the world's best instructor, the best curriculum, and the smartest student, and it could still fail just because of the office vibe?
I love the gardening analogy the source material uses. Think of the training program as a seed. You can engineer a genetically perfect seed. That's your curriculum.
Right.
But if you toss that seed onto concrete or into toxic soil, it will not grow. The work environment is the soil.
Okay, let's analyze the toxins in the soil. What specifically stops that seed from growing?
The research identifies 3 main transfer killers. The first one is manager support variability. This is the biggest one. You return to a manager who either doesn't know what you learned, doesn't care, or worst case, actively contradicts it.
Oh, the old, forget what they told you at the seminar, this is the real world speech.
That destroys transfer instantly. It signals that the training has no value here. The second killer is system misalignment. This is when the organization's structure fights the training. For example, HR spends money training you to be collaborative and share resources. But the operations department calculates your bonus based entirely on your individual sales performance, pitted against your peers.
So my brain knows to collaborate, but my wallet tells me to compete.
And the wallet usually wins. The third killer is simply time constraints. We expect people to integrate complex new behaviors while they're drowning in their day-to-day execution. There's no slack in the system to practice.
So we have a clear picture of the problem. We're planting seeds in concrete. Now let's pivot to the solution. The article breaks this down into phases, and what surprised me is that the work starts way before the workshop begins. Phase 1, the pregame.
This is where most organizations fail. They treat the start date as the day of the workshop. But the research shows that motivation to transfer the user's intent to actually use the skill is decided before they even walk in the room.
So how do we build that motivation? Is it just sending a hype email saying, get ready?
No, hype doesn't work. Utility works. Relevance works.
Yeah.
The source points to General Electric's historical approach as a gold standard here.
Oh, interesting.
They didn't just enroll people, they mandated pre-program activities.
What does that look like practically?
It's a structured conversation between the participant and their boss. They sit down and discuss specific questions. Why are you going to this? What specific business problem are we trying to solve? When you come back, what are we going to measure?
That shifts the dynamic completely. It goes from, I'm getting a few days off work to, I am on a mission to solve a problem for my team.
Exactly. It creates accountability.
Mm-hmm.
If my boss knows why I'm going, I know she's going to be watching for the results.
Yeah.
The article also touches on selection. Stop sending people just because they're free on Tuesday. You have to assess readiness.
Right.
If someone views the training as a punishment like remedial school because they messed up, they won't learn. Their walls are up.
Okay, so we've prepped the soil. Now we move to phase 2, The training is happening, or just finished. The learner returns to the desk. Who is the most important person in their life right now?
It is unequivocally the direct manager. The data is overwhelming on this. The direct manager is the gatekeeper of transfer.
But here's my skepticism. Managers are swamped, they're fighting fires. Is it realistic to expect them to act as a learning coach for every direct report?
That is the pushback every organization gives. We don't have time. But the counter-argument, supported by the Microsoft case study in the article, is that you don't need more time. You need structured time. You have to systematize the support so it's not a heavy lift.
Tell me about the Microsoft approach. How do they make it manageable?
They use manager preview sessions and transfer support conversation guides.
Conversation guides, like
Yeah.
a script.
Basically, yes. It removed the cognitive load for the manager. They don't have to guess what their employee learned. They get a one-pager that says, "Your employee learned about active listening today. Here are 3 questions to ask them in your next one-on-one. Here's a behavior to look for in the next team meeting."
That's brilliant. It turns a vague, "how was the workshop?" into, "show me the active listening technique."
And it signals that this matters. But Microsoft takes it a step further, and this addresses the system alignment issue we talked about. They made supporting employee development a metric in the manager's own performance review.
Ah, there's the leverage.
If a manager knows their own bonus or promotion depends on their team growing, they will miraculously find the time to have those conversations. Behavior follows incentives. If you don't measure the manager on it, they will prioritize other things.
So we have the motivated learner and the equipped manager. But there's a psychological hurdle here too. Phase 3, the article talks about safety. Because trying a new leadership style is, frankly, it's awkward.
It's incredibly awkward. Think about the first time you try to give constructive feedback using a new framework. You sound robotic. You might stumble over the words.
You feel like you're reading from a teleprompter.
And if you try that in a high-stakes environment where mistakes are punished or where people mock you for trying, you will stop immediately. You'll retreat to what's safe.
This is where Amy Edmondson's concept of psychological safety becomes a prerequisite for transfer. You need a practice field, a safe zone, where you can be bad at the skill before you get good at it.
The healthcare example on the source material was fascinating for this. They used peer consultation groups.
Okay.
So imagine a group of nurse managers who all went through the training together. They meet specifically to confess their struggles. One might say, "I tried to use the new conflict resolution tool with a doctor, and he shut me down completely. I felt like an idiot."
And instead of being judged, the group helps dissect it.
Exactly. "Oh, that happened to me too. Here's what I tried next time." It normalizes the failure. It reframes the struggle as part of the learning process, not a sign of incompetence. If you don't have that peer support, the isolation kills the learning. You think you're the only one failing, so you quit.
Now, I want to circle back to the system alignment piece because the Salesforce example in the text seemed like the holy grail of connecting the dots.
Salesforce is a great example of vertical alignment. They don't let HR operate on an island. They work to ensure that the language used in the training room is the exact same language used in the performance review.
It sounds obvious, but it's so rare, right? Usually the training says, be a servant leader, and the review form asks, did you hit your numbers?
Correct. And that creates cognitive dissonance. Salesforce tries to synchronize the signals. If you take a course on inclusive leadership, that specific competency is likely to appear on the rubric for your next promotion. It closes the loop. It tells the employee, we aren't just teaching you this for fun. This is the currency of success at this company.
The article also mentions a design element called action learning. How does that fit in?
Action learning is about dissolving the wall between class and work. Instead of giving you a Harvard Business School case study about a manufacturing plant in the 1980s, which might be interesting but irrelevant, we say, bring a real problem that is keeping you up at night right now.
So you are solving your own work problems as the curriculum.
Yes. You apply the skills in real time. The transfer happens during the learning. You don't have to wonder if it applies to your job because you are literally doing your job. It bridges the gap by erasing the gap.
We've covered a lot of specific tactics conversation guides, peer groups, alignment, but there's a broader theme here that the article calls building a learning culture. This feels like the final boss level.
It is. This is about moving from event-based thinking to ecosystem thinking. The article highlights Intuit, the company behind TurboTax and QuickBooks, as a pioneer here. They focused heavily on the growth mindset, popularized by Carol Dweck.
That's the belief that intelligence isn't fixed, right?
Yeah.
That you can get better at anything.
Right. But Intuit operationalized it. They encouraged loud learning. Leaders would publicly admit mistakes or things they didn't know. When a VP stands up and says, I'm not good at this yet, I'm still learning, it gives permission for everyone else to be in beta mode.
It shifts the culture from proving to improving.
That's a great way to put it. And when the culture shifts, the soil changes. Suddenly, those seeds of training have a place to take root. You aren't mocked for trying something new. You're celebrated for it.
But, and I have to play the skeptic one last time, how do we know? We can feel good about the culture, but businesses run on data. How do we measure if any of this ecosystem stuff is actually working?
You have to move beyond the smile sheet.
The survey at the end that asks if the lunch was good?
Exactly. Did you enjoy the facilitator? That correlates almost zero with actual learning transfer. The article references the Kirkpatrick model of evaluation. You need to get to level 3, behavior.
How do you measure behavior? It seems subjective.
It can be tough, but you use 360-degree feedback, observational data, or specific business metrics. 6 months after the training, are the participants' teams showing lower turnover? Are their engagement scores higher? Are they actually doing the things they were taught? If you aren't measuring behavior, you are just guessing.
So, to pull this all together for our listener, we started with the Monday morning amnesia, the frustration of lost potential.
And we found that the cure isn't better slides or more charismatic speakers. It's about the system.
It's a transfer ecosystem. It requires a pre-game motivation strategy connecting the why. It requires managers who are armed with scripts and incentives, like at Microsoft. It requires a safe space to fail, like in those healthcare peer groups. And it requires the systems, the bonuses and promotions, to align with the values, like at Salesforce.
Absolutely. Leadership development is a team sport. It involves the learner, the manager, and the organization. If any one of those three drops the ball, the transfer fails.
So here is the challenge for you, the listener. Whether you're an HR leader designing a program, a manager sending a team member off to learn, or the person sitting in the workshop yourself, don't just show up.
Look at your soil.
I want to leave you with a thought from the expert perspective. We've talked about seeds and soil a lot today.
I'd ask the listener to reflect on this. If you are a leader, you are the climate for your team. You are the weather. When your people come back from learning something new, bringing that fragile little seedling of a new skill back to the office, are you the sunlight that helps it grow? Or are you the pavement that ensures it never stands a chance?
Are you the sunlight or the pavement? That is going to stick with me. Thanks for taking us through the research.
A pleasure.
And thank you for listening. Go till that soil, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.